Hi, I'm Izzy Schultz, and I decided to do my biology project on neurons transmitting and receiving signals. So, what is a neuron? So, neurons are nerve cells that form the brain and nervous system, functioning as messengers by sending and receiving chemical and electrical signals. So, these signals basically allow us to think, feel, move, any signal necessary for you to do everyday movements, basically. So, the key parts of a neuron, so there's the dendrites, the axon, the cell body, and the axon terminal. So the dendrites, they're located on the top of the neuron, and they're the tree-like extensions that receive messages from other neurons. The cell body, so the cell body is the base where the dendrites branch off, and it contains the nucleus and the other organelles. The axon is the base of the whole neuron. It carries the electrical signals away from the cell body to other neurons. And then finally, the axon terminal. It looks similar to the dendrites, except it's at the other end of the neuron. So the branches at the end of the axon release neurotransmitters into the synaptic cleft to communicate with neurons. If you're wondering what the synaptic cleft is, it's the microscopic gap between two neurons. So how neurons communicate. So there's signal reception, signal integration, and action potential. So the dendrites receive the signal sent from the other neurons in signal reception, and then in signal integration, the cell body and axon hillock integrate the signals with the action potential. If the signal is not strong enough, an electrical impulse called the action potential is generated and goes down to the axon. So here is a diagram of neurotransmitter release. So you can see the receptors, the transporters, the synaptic vesicle, and the neurotransmitter molecules as well, and basically all of that stuff. Next is the death of a neuron. So consequences of multineuron death. So if you only lose one or two neurons, nothing drastic or life-threatening will occur. However, if you lose like mass amounts of neurons, you could suffer from neurological disorders, cognitive declines, and neurodevelopmental diseases. For example, neuron death is a key factor in neurodegenerative diseases like Alzheimer's and Parkinson's disease. And then there's apoptosis, which is regulated cell death. So we've been learning about in cell communication, we've also learned about the process known as apoptosis. So apoptosis is a form of controlled cell death. So when a cell becomes abnormal, the cell basically self-destructs to avoid uncontrollable growth, also known as cancer. So neurons can die for many reasons, but one of the natural ways they die is due to excessive stimulation of the glutamate receptors. So glutamate receptors are proteins that facilitate a glutamate's action as the primary neurotransmitter in the central nervous system. Next is oxidative stress. So oxidative stress is an imbalance between the production of oxygen species and the ability of the cell to neutralize them can lead to neuron death as well. Some more causes of neuron death can be inflammation. So for example, like an inflammatory response in the brain can also lead to neuron death, like when the brain swells due to a traumatic injury, a stroke, or even cardiac arrest can also cause an inflammatory response in the brain. There's also mitochondrial dysfunction. So as we know, the mitochondria is plays a crucial role in the cell, not just neurons. So it provides energy for the cell and all of its organelles, and for forms of cell communication and transport as well. So dysfunction of the mitochondria can trigger death pathways within the neuron as well. So next we'll talk about the birth of a neuron. So the process of a new neuron being born is known as neurogenesis. Neurogenesis starts with the neural stem cells, and the neural stem cells come from the neurogenic niche. So the neurogenic niche is a specialized microenvironment within the brain that is rich in the neurostem cells. So the next step of a neuron being born is division. So the neurostem cells then divide to make more stem cells, which are now called progenitor cells. So progenitor cells come from a stem cell and have limited capacity to divide into specific but restricted sets of cell types. And then there's differentiation, which is when the progenitor cell then differentiate into specific types of neurons. And then there's migration and integration. So migration is when the new neurons migrate into designated parts of the brain. And then integration is when the neurons get mature and bigger, and then they migrate into neural networks to form brain circuits. So here is a diagram of neurogenesis. So as you can see, here is a neural stem cell, and then here are the neural progenitor cells, and then the blood vessels, and then you can see migration. So when the new neurons migrate into designated parts of the brain, and then they become an immature neuron, and then all the way to when they're a mature neuron and they go to form brain circuits.
Thank you so much for watching and listening, and here is my works cited. Thank you.